part 2 of the roads of Iceland. Now a bunch of these, or at least a couple of these, are duplicates, like this and this one, and this one, kind of. So, and I took way more pictures of roads while I was there. This one's gonna be mostly useless because of the shadow, but let's see what we can do with a bunch of these. Some of these I'm really proud of. I'm gonna start with the first one I'm really proud of, not because it's great, but because I like how it turned out. All right, so this one was actually at a waterfalls, and walking to this waterfalls, at least the route that I took, it took me about maybe an hour to get there. I almost turned back. And the waterfalls, this might sound a little crappy, but it was a little underwhelming once I got there for all that hike. But then it turns out I should have taken my time to enjoy the walk more, rather than thinking that the destination itself would have been awesome. And so the waterfalls is actually behind me, and there are a million pictures of waterfalls in Iceland. So I thought this was a much more interesting picture. So this is the walkway leading, or the final path leading to the waterfalls, which is behind me. And when I turned around, I thought, man, this is an incredible shot. And it was one of the rare instances where nobody would be walking on this little wooden path. And they created this path, by the way, so people would stay off the grass, or I forgot what they call this, the greenery that's growing on the sides here. It's very beautiful. All right, let's see what we can do. I actually have printed this one, and it looks really nice on the wall. All right, so just by using the auto features of Lightroom, that's a big difference. Big difference. All right, what else would I do here? I didn't think I did as much as I'm about to do when I printed it, and it still looks amazing. All right, so let's go back a little bit, and what I'm going to start doing now is, rather than just blindly editing or just starting to crank all of these levers, I'm going to first see, or at least visualize what I want to change, and in this case verbalize it, because obviously if I'm by myself I wouldn't be saying this out loud. But it's too dark for sure, it's underexposed. I think I might have used a filter on here, and the first thing I do is raise the exposure, maybe like that, and then I'd raise the shadows, kind of like that, and then I'd set the white point by doing Command Shift click white, and set the black point by saying Command Shift black, and that's supposed to be the ideal point. All right, so even if I hit Alt right now, those points shouldn't move too much. Okay, so I think that looks incredible, or at least a big improvement to what I did. And I wouldn't raise the shadows too much, because I want it to be at least somewhat authentic. I mean, that does still look kind of good, but I'm gonna leave it like this. And then let's put a mask on here. This was such a beautiful day. This is actually how the sky looked on that day, even though the picture was originally underexposed, but that's what it looked like on the day for sure. Let's put a mask on here for the greenery and see if we can make that pop a little more. So let's do a color range, and I think that looks good. And let's see if we can not raise the exposure, not raise the tint, but the saturation. And then what if we did the luminance, make it pop? Oh, let me see. Now we'll do it after. Actually, yeah, we can do this. We can raise the luminance to make it pop, and then we can increase the clarity. I don't think I'd do much more with that. It doesn't need to be sharp. And then what about the sky? Let us make the sky pop a little bit more. So let's add another mask, and this one will be the color range of blue. And let's put some saturation. See, is it just a sky? Yeah, just the blue. Beautiful. So I think that looks good. And then what if we did go back to this one and increase the contrast a little bit. Okay, let's put another mask in here, and this will be for these areas, and increase the contrast just a tiny bit. Okay, just like that. All right, and then we can select the sky and drop the whites a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now, what did it pick? Yeah, it looks like it did. All right, we'll drop the whites a little bit in the sky and increase the contrast. And that looks good. All right, and what can we do about this back here? So add one more mask and we'll add a luminance, what do you call it? Luminance. And we'll increase the contrast a little bit on that. Because now that I look at it, the sky over here was, I wanted people to follow this out. And on the way out to just enjoy what's on either side. All right, so let's see what we've done so far. Let's look at before and after. And I think that looks good. What would I have done differently? Well, I don't know if there's any more value having all of this in here. I guess the only thing interesting about this bit over here on the bottom right is the yellow flowers. But then you can see them here. So I don't know if maybe I could have cropped in a little bit more or zoomed in or taken a couple steps forward, and that would have given the same effect, just to narrow the focus a little bit. Let's see how that looks. That doesn't look too bad. We can straighten that, I think, because right now it looks a little lean. So we can do it like that. Yeah, even though I think the boards or the floor of the walkway, the wood of the walkway is gonna be the kind of the guide for the horizon line, unfortunately, because anything else it's gonna look crooked, even though I don't think the camera was crooked. So I have to do it like this, in my view. All right, I liked how this turned out. I enjoyed the walk more than the actual waterfalls. Okay, this is a part of the walk, by the way, and there's a huge cliff back here. There's a tiny, I wouldn't call it a waterfall, it's more like a stream in here. And I could have waited a little bit longer, but I think I waited a little bit to try to not have these people in the picture. But you know, it's not my place, and I just had to do with it what I could. I could have also cropped them out a little bit, but I wanted a mountain range in it. So let's see what we can do with this picture. And we can raise the exposure significantly. I think this looks like F4 is not too bad. ISO 50, so I could have used a high ISO. One that's, you know, instead of using one that's about the same value as my IQ, I could have gone up higher than 50. That's okay. All right, what else can we do in here? We can put a mask on here. Let's use a color range for the green. Yeah, and then let's raise the exposure ever so slightly, and the saturation and the contrast. What does this do? Nah, that's garbage. Let's leave it like that, and then we could dehaze it, and let's put another mask on here, except now let's do let's do that one. Okay, that's for the ground. Good. And then we can increase the contrast a little bit, Raise the exposure. No, we don't want it to overpower the sky. And then we could drop the shadows. What's that do? Yeah. Drop the shadows just a tiny bit. And then I think if I was looking at the original picture, I forgot I said I was going to do this. It's obviously underexposed, at least to my eyes. And the blues in the sky are not too visible. Now that's kind of true to form, at least how the camera interpreted it, but as I remember it, maybe because I was just overwhelmed that day, but it looked bluer. And there was a lot going on, and it was just really nice to look at. All right, so let's see if we can do even more with the blue. So that's before, after so far. What else can we do with the sky? Let us select a color. So many awesome tools on Lightroom. And let's do one with the sky mask. Let's do that. Let's see how that does. That's incredible. All right, and then we can let's drop the exposure a little bit, increase the contrast, and then drop the shadows. And then I think, let me see, come on, shift. All right, and let's see now what we have. That's before, that's after. Before, that's after. Kind of like how that looked. Now, what would I have done differently? Actually, I think I took another picture which was a little bit better. Is to focus more on this little bit here, which was my intent to begin with. I think here I just took out the tripod and stuck the camera on it, snapped a picture. But I wish I had gone in closer and just picked a spot, because there was so much to look at, and just gotten something like this here. Even if they were in the shot, but just gone in closer and gotten the waterfalls. Maybe not dead center, even like that would have been good. And just get one side of the path, not the whole thing. Don't need all the sky. And there's not much going on in the path here, so we could have done that. And then I think that would have been a little bit more interesting. Even crop it a little bit more. But it's all a learning process. So yeah, that would have been interesting, more interesting, I think. All right, moving on. It turns out on the week that I was there was an active volcano. I don't think that's strange for Iceland. The whole island basically is as a result of multiple volcanic eruptions. And so this is an active volcano, not one that was threatening anybody as far as I remember, but you could see it there in the distance. And it looks like it's near, we call it like a population, but it's some distance away. But I thought it was cool that you could see it from the road. I was just driving back to where I was staying, and you could see it. I thought that was really interesting. And the road is kind of pointing in that direction. Right off the bat, what I could have done differently is, at the risk of getting hit by a truck, I mean, this is a soft shoulder, so it would have been safe, is not include so much of this guardrail. I think so. Right now it's underexposed, and it was late evening. This was, let's see the time. This was, yeah, 8:37 p.m. So I would raise the exposure, even though these purple flowers, which are ubiquitous in Iceland, were pretty. I don't think they add any value, none of this. So I could have cropped it to just about this. So let's try to fix the color first. All right, that doesn't look too bad, but this is the intent of the shot, the focal point of the shot, not all this business here. So let's try to crop it out and see if we can make it even a little bit more interesting. No, I guess I'd have to use, I can't use utility poles because they're not uniformly vertical. And I can't use this mountain range because that doesn't go straight across. So my guess is I then have to use an imaginary line through the eruption, the cloud, or this cloud of eruption here, the horizontal one, and that would have to be the point of reference to keep the picture straight. But let me try different things and see what that does. So if we do it kind of like this, I actually think that looks better. Maybe this building here gave it reference. So this is kind of horizontal in the same way this is horizontal too, not too far off. I think that would have been a better shot. I don't think it's particularly great to begin with. I just, one of those times you take a phone out of your camera, you snap a picture, think it's gonna be as awesome in the camera as it is in your mind. And it's not the case all the time, but it's not too bad. I'm glad I took the picture. Okay. At the very least, some of these pictures are not so much about award-winning photography, as is really the case with anything I do with these cameras. Right now, at least. Eventually, it might be. Who knows? It's more about the memory of it. And so when you go somewhere, I take a picture, I can remember there's a story behind why I snapped this photo. So it's not so much, in my view, at least for me right now, I hope that this gets recognized for something special. I will look back at this day and think, oh, this is why I stopped by the side of this road, where I was, what I was thinking, why I snapped the picture, that kind of thing. All right, and this one I think is interesting because the road kind of continues and it almost disappears and it picks up again this way. And I like this. This was late evening. I think this was 7:58 p.m. I'm pretty sure it was later than this, but I don't know why I explained that, but it's okay. And you can still see the cloud of eruption here. This was taken before I got back into town, before this shot, right? Because this was taken at 8:37 p.m. and this was taken at 7-something p.m. according to Lightroom. All right, so right off the bat, it's underexposed. You know what's funny? Now that I think about it, I don't think I took this picture knowing I could have seen the eruption from the volcano. I think I took it mainly for the benefit of capturing this interesting road. All right, so I would raise the exposure. Let's see what Lightroom does with an auto setting. Okay, that's not too bad. And then if we select just the sky, that does an amazing job. We'll increase the contrast so we can get more of the cloud. And then we could decrease the whites a little bit. We could change the temperature too. That's too much. Let's do this. And then we could add another mask for the greens. Let's do a luminance range. And then we could increase the contrast, raise the exposure, add some saturation. And then let's add a color, like a color picker, increase the saturation of that. And let's raise that, okay. And let's add another one for, okay, let's see what, if we can select more, that's less. We want to select just that, okay. All right, yes, I think that looks good. And then we can increase the contrast a little bit, raise the exposure just a tiny bit, raise the shadow. Yeah, that's better, I think. And then let's see the sky. Let's pick blue from the sky. Yeah, all right, we can't do much with this. Let's see what we have for before and after. Before, after, before, after. Now, what could I have done different? Wait a second, are there things written? It looks like there are letters in here, huh? But I don't think so. Looks like there, you know, sometimes you drive by some towns and people, they manicure the shrubs to write something. It kind of looks that way from a distance, but when I zoom in, it's just my mind looking for patterns where they aren't. All right, what I would have done differently would be to get a picture more like this. Sky is not that interesting beyond these last layers of clouds there. So maybe like that would have been cool. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, because then you're gonna follow the road, but then eventually if you follow the road, you're gonna see this. Unfortunately, for someone who does not know what this is about, we just think this is just another layer of clouds. But I know that there's a story here, even though the picture doesn't tell the story clearly enough. That is because of a volcanic eruption. All right, moving on. This one I liked because of this cloud that was just hanging out on top here. Now this looks like grainy city, as you would say, dark. I just made that up. It's not a thing. Nobody says that. But it just looks underexposed. It's going to be grainy. Even if I raise the exposure, this is not going to be recoverable, I don't think. But I could drop the shadows a little bit. And if we put a mask on here, let's put a luminance mask. And then we will okay, let's do that. And let's increase the contrast. If we raise the exposure, it looks like garbage. It's not gonna look great. And then let's adjust the sky. That actually looks good. Let's drop the exposure and let's make it evening. Because that's closer to how it looked while I was there. Increase the contrast a little bit. And then drop the highlights. And then let's see what we got. That's before, that's after. All right, so this is not a particularly great picture. All right, my thought process while I was taking this shot is, as I was driving by, of course, the roads were desolate, which I think was always awesome. And I was kind of going for a crisscross of these mountains here. But if this was in the center of it, maybe it would have been more interesting, but maybe too plain. Maybe, I don't know. But the camera did a good job capturing a good amount of detail. It's just that it was real dark at that time. So 7:43, not a lot of light. I know this was later in the evening. I don't think it was 7 something. I think what's happening is this is converting it to Eastern time. But in Icelandic time, which I think is 5 hours ahead, it was way later. I'm pretty sure it was way later. And we can actually check, so let me see if I can check on my list of pictures to cross-reference it. Let's see if we can find the exact same one, because I'm pretty sure it was much later than that. But it's just that the Lightroom is giving me a different time. All right. Created. See, that doesn't even make any sense. It said here 9 something on my actual disk. It's okay. So that's not the time. It's just that it's converting it to Eastern time. It's gotta be. Yeah, it's gotta be. You know why? Because the time in the camera is Eastern time, and I did not convert this time to Icelandic time. So even though it's gonna say 7:43 p.m., Iceland, I think, is 5 or so hours ahead. So that's gonna tell you how late this was in the evening or night, or early morning, as you would say, midnight, right? But it was real dark. Okay, on to the next one. This one also, so add about 5 hours to these times. That's going to be about 12:31 p.m., 12:31 a.m. This was also an interesting road, I think. Right away, what I would have done differently, you can kind of see how this is, the camera is not pointing straight. So I wish I had pointed the camera in the same direction as the lines on the road. But let's see what we can do. It's underexposed. Let's see if we can raise the exposure to get some life out of this. That's a little bit better already. I wouldn't do much with this, because you know what? This black and white actually doesn't look too bad. It wasn't, no, this is better. It wasn't colorful. So I wish I had gotten lower down and then maybe cropped this way to get less. This is the thing I'm learning also. I don't have to include everything that I can see with my eyes in the camera. It's almost like I want to capture everything. But I'm not shooting with a wide angle lens, and not everything's going to be as interesting in the photo. It's going to be distracting in some cases. All right, this one was actually near a hotel or a hostel where I stopped, not to stay, but just to check it out. It was pretty cool, and I like this path because the sun was, you could see, coming in from the left to camera right, and then the casting the shadows of these trees along this dirt path, and I like that. So let's see what we can do. The only thing I'll do differently is probably get less of the trees on this side, or take another shot if I could, going this way in the same direction of the sun, maybe, or get closer to the trees and get the trees now as the leading lines going that way and get a little bit of the shadows. That would have been interesting. So I get the road, the trees, and the shadows all leading this way. I don't know if we get some of the road, any more of the road is going to make it any more interesting. But let's see what we can do if we use auto, and that looks a little better. Let's see what we have. That's before, after. Subtle difference. All right, so let's then make the sky a little bit bluer by selecting a color. Let's do that. And then let's do that. And let's select a different part of the sky. Okay. And then let's do the green. Is that going to be enough? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That looks good. And I think this was evening too. So this was maybe 8-something p.m. So not too bad, but it wasn't quite yellow. So we can dial back. Actually, let me see what auto does. Actually, that does look nice, so we'll leave that. And then I wouldn't change much here, but let's do something with the road, just to add some contrast here with the road. I'm just gonna select the right range. Okay. All right, let's add some contrast to the road here, and then we will leave it like that. So let us then see before, after, before, after. That looks better already, much better. Let us then go, 1 second, let me turn off this AC. Hey Google, turn off AC.
Okay, changing hallway to off.
All right, so I think that looks better already. Moving on to the next one. Not a lot in here left. Let's do this one. This was also a cool one. I like this because the sky was interesting, and so was this road. Now, what time of the day was this? This was 8-something at night. And I think someone called these flowers here an invasive species, but I think they look pretty. I do. But they were everywhere, for sure. All right, let's see what we can do with the auto. Okay, that looks better already. And then let's select the green. And let's raise the exposure. Oh, there is a saturation. Okay, that does look better, not too much. And let's select the blue in the sky. Not a wholly, let's do that. And let's select this part here. And let's drop the saturation. Okay, now let's raise it up a little bit. Okay. And then let's make it less. Okay, that's good. And then okay. And then we will actually, I don't think I want to do anything else different. All right. As far as the colors, I don't know if I do much more. Maybe I can adjust the contrast in the sky. So let's add a mask for the sky. Increase the contrast, drop the exposure, and then drop the whites, drop the shadows. Cool. And then as far as framing or composition, I think I could have stepped closer. But I like these trees on the side here. Kind of adds scale to the picture, I think. I just don't like the shadow of, I think this is either my big head or a part of the car. I think so. But let's see if we can crop some of that business out. Yeah. And then kind of like that. We don't need all of the sky, just a little bit. And then we can straighten it to, I think it's better if it's like this. Let's go with the mountains in the back. All right, I think that's not too bad. Actually, I like this. Okay, moving on. The only reason I stopped and took this picture, actually now that I look at it, kind of looks like a lady's bum, but I liked how this was just on the side of the road, and I thought, let me get a picture of this going to it. As it turns out, there was a vehicle coming from around the corner, but it's some distance away. I'm still gonna say that's maybe a quarter of a mile, maybe 2 kilometers or so away. I think, I'm not sure, maybe my scale's off. But now that I look at it, it's not that great of a picture, and it doesn't tell any interesting stories. So, moving on. Neither did this one. This one's actually not too bad. I couldn't stand in the middle of the road here because this road was closer to a town, and you could see that there are way more cars coming. Way more cars. And I like this one because I think this is closer to the middle of the day than anything else. Maybe I just set out or was close to setting out. I don't know. This was at 8-something p.m. And I liked how this looked. That's the only reason I stopped here, because I wanted to get at least a few more pictures of a road as I went back to town. I think I was going back to town here, and it looked really interesting at the time. No, I wouldn't edit this much because I don't think there's much story here to look at. This one is also interesting because the road was just disappearing off into the hill. Now, it didn't look as steep as it has been exaggerated to look like here, but it's still interesting in my eyes of the road going up here. Now, what would I have done differently is probably gone closer, so taking just a couple steps forward. Just a couple steps forward. And show it like that. Maybe black and white would have been cool. And then let's do it like that, and then increase the contrast, drop the exposure. It looks dreamy like, even, goodness mercy. And I think that I wouldn't do much with this. This is good enough as it is. All right, keep going here. We have, this one was just a dirt road, nothing particularly interesting, except it was just a dirt road I was driving by, and I just stopped and snapped a picture. I like this picture because how the road was curving. I actually think I composed this really well, if I do say so myself, but I'm not an expert composer, if that's a thing. In any case, the road disappears down here and then reappears again, going this way. And so this, I don't even think you could see any vehicles out here, but that's at the top of a house. You can tell how far this is. How far this, oh no. Wait a second, what happened? How far away this is. Is there a cow here? No, wait, what is that? 1 second. What is that? Oh, it's a bird. A bird in motion. Oh, okay. I like this. Now, the sky was not blue. Not at all. Not even a little bit. It was overcast. So, you can change the sky, but I wouldn't do that. Not knocking anybody who would. I'm just saying I wouldn't, because that's not how it looked, and that's gonna mess with the memory of the day, in my view. But it was overcast, and this is just what I got. All right, let's see what that looks like black and white. Yeah, so when I was driving on this road, it did not feel like, you know, sometimes you drive on some roads and you go down a dip, kind of depending on how fast you drive, it felt like your car, you're on a roller coaster. I didn't get that impression. It felt real smooth. No, I don't drive fast to begin with, but it was a nice road to drive on. You could tell here it's well taken care of. And I drive slow, especially in these situations, because I don't want to miss much. So I'm still looking around a little bit, with care, obviously, because some of these roads, as you can imagine, there's a precipice on one side and hills on the other. So if you take your eye off the road in a careless way, no, that sounds like an oxymoron, then you might end up in a ditch somewhere. Okay, moving on. I liked this picture, and the intent for this was to show the road that looked like it's leading to nowhere, but then off to the right, this awesome farm. I think it's a farm. Yeah, it's a farm. And it just looks beautiful under there. I took maybe 6 or 7 pictures, different versions of this. And the only thing I would have done differently is probably used a wider lens. I think, yeah, a wider lens to get more this way. Because right now, in my mind, it looks like a part of the picture has been cropped off, and I haven't done anything to it yet. So I could have used a wider lens, and that would have shown why I took a picture like this. Right now it looks like I got, yeah, the roads there, cool. But then just when it starts to get interesting, it's cut off. All right, this one is also interesting. Right away, what would I have done differently is not included this utility pole in here. Now in Iceland, the utility, the power lines and so on are buried underground, at least in the places that I saw. But I could have moved forward a little bit or zoomed in. I think if I had stepped forward or went to this side of the road, I could have gotten all of this hill, and this is a huge hill, by the way, without the utility pole. I could have. And if I even went closer, I could have gotten it without the sign. Yeah, I could have. But this was beautiful to look at. Just awe-inspiring. I couldn't help but look at it. And they had signs here that would warn people about when to hike and who should hike and what kind of equipment you should take and so on and so forth. Because it looks perfectly scalable. But upon closer inspection, when I went closer to it, I mean, I wouldn't have gone up there to begin with. Some of these are just loose rocks and loose bits of dirt. And it can get windy and cold. So I don't have anything that could give it scale really except this huge truck. All right, so this is a huge truck, so you can imagine how high that is. And that is still some distance away from the foot of this hill. Anything else can give it scale? I can't see anybody in here. Just the trucks. Okay. And these are the same hills but from a different vantage point. All right, let's keep going. I'm just gonna go to the interesting one. Let's see. Okay, we're gonna do a couple more. I like this picture because this was a little hotel, if you want to call it a hotel, place you could stay at, or I think so, that was just set off the road. So I was driving by with a friend of mine and we happened to see this. And I thought this was fantastic. And here are these flowers again, the ubiquitous purple flowers. I actually didn't get their names, I don't think. And I like this picture because the road seemed to lead to this house in the background. I can't help but have my eyes drawn to this little building. The one thing I would have done differently is not include this part of this gate here. So if I could have cropped it out or just stepped closer, and I think it would have made a more interesting picture. I think it could have been a much more interesting picture had I had the foresight to do that. Just take a couple steps forward and then that would have been a much more interesting picture. All right, so I'm gonna edit this one to see what we can do. Let's add a mask in here. Let's add a color range mask for the greens, and then we will increase the saturation, increase the contrast a little bit, and let's add a luminance range for the mountains in the back, and let's increase the contrast and raise the shadow. And let's add one for the sky, and we will drop the whites and change the contrast a little bit. Drop the exposure just to bring back some detail so that it's not completely blown out. And then let's add some color. All right, so that's looking not too bad at all. And then let's see what it would do if I said select a subject, and it did so almost perfectly, almost perfectly. Okay, so let's see before and after for this quick and dirty edit. That's before, that's after. I prefer this one. Okay, and this one is going to be the last one, I think. Let me see. Okay, it's going to be 4 more. This one I liked because there is so much going on in this scene here. We had stopped at another waterfalls, which was enormous. I might do a video on just waterfalls that I saw, but there might be a million of these on YouTube already, regardless. And this waterfalls had so many paths you can walk on and so on and so forth. And out in the distance, it looked like these series of structures were just on a little mound by itself, surrounded by a ditch, like it was carved out. I don't know if it went behind these trees, but this just looks very ominous, like something out of a fairy tale. And the only road leading to it, as far as I could see from this direction, was this road here. And then once you're there, it's almost like you're in your own little enclave, which I think is fantastic, just fascinating. I did take another shot of it, zoomed in a little more. But this is just lava field and then this little enclave. And once you get beyond here, it looks like well manicured grass with these, I forgot what you call these hay bales? I don't think so. But they just wrapped up grass, it looks like. All right, so let's see what we can do to make this a little better. Okay, that looks better already. Let's increase the overall contrast. And what about the sky? We can drop the exposure a little bit, drop the whites, increase the contrast, and select the color to make it bluer. Yeah, it looks better, I think better. And then we can dehaze the sky a little bit. Goodness mercy, that looks better. And then what if we add a luminance mask to these areas to add some contrast? So let's see if we can do that. Let's do that, and we'll add some contrast. And we can add some saturation. And then what about the reds of these houses? Okay. All right, now let's see before, after, before, after. All right, a lot more could be done. We could crop this in, but I kind of like having all this in the foreground. In retrospect, I wish I had used maybe stacked images to make everything sharp from the foreground all the way to the background. So I could have used maybe pixel shift, which is kind of hard because then things are moving, or I could have used focus stacking, and then that would have given me sharp images from the foreground to all the way to the background. But that looks pretty good. That looks real good. I like how this looks. All right, we're gonna skip some of this stuff here. All right, this is gonna be a perfect example of how I know the time is not right. That says 7:37 p.m. On the Icelandic summer, the sun doesn't set until about midnight in the Icelandic time. So it was about 12 something p.m. for sure. You can tell because the sun's setting right there. I thought that looked really beautiful. And this was, I was by myself on this particular leg of the journey. And I was just driving around trying to get the most out of all these scenes. And that looks like what I saw. That looks like what I saw. Let's go back. That looks more like what I saw, for sure. We can drop the exposure even more and drop the whites even more. That looks more like what I saw, for sure. It was just beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I liked how this road was leading right to it. Now, what could I have done differently? I don't think I needed to include this barrier in it, but it was there for a reason. So I didn't want to cross the barrier and break the rules because they put this here for a reason. I imagine you weren't allowed to cross here. If I could read these signs, it says no swimming, something else, I don't know. I just didn't want to cross here, but I could have taken a couple steps forward or zoomed in with the lens. I think this was a variable, like it was a zoom lens. This was a 28 to 75, shot at 75. Okay, so I was zoomed in at the max. All right, so if I had a different lens, I could have zoomed in even more. And I'm afraid to crop in because I'm going to lose detail. But, I mean, anybody could tell that this is a sunset regardless. So, I'm going to leave it like this. Yeah, I mean, that still looks nice. Not a lot of detail here, but that still looks nice. The only reason I like this one is because it kind of gives an idea of the vastness of the scene. But we don't need all of this, right? We don't need all of this. Okay, and this was behind a lighthouse. This is all of this is in the same area. When I say same area, maybe a 5 or 10 mile radius. was maybe 5 mile radius, all of it. And inaccessible if you're not driving. I met someone who was riding around the area. She got so sick from exhaustion. Seemed like a good idea, but some of these roads, as you can tell here, are like this. They're even worse. So if you don't have a car and you're trying to ride or rough it out, it's not going to work out. In any case, there are all kinds of, I don't think it was a hot spring or a geyser, but this was coming out, and this looks like clouds in the sky, but it's coming out of the ground, which was just beautiful. I don't think this is a great picture per se. I just think this captured what I saw, and it's a good memory of what was happening. And the ground, parts of the ground did look red like this. I didn't see many of those purple flowers around here, but the sky did look that blue. And then this was at, looks like 11 something p.m. and it was gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. And I wouldn't do much with this, to be honest. I wouldn't do much with this at all. This was a hill that you can climb. It doesn't look steep here, but it really was. Because coming off, it's almost like I lean back just to walk back there. And you can see someone standing here, so that kind of gives an idea of how high this is. That's a bird. And that's somebody right there too. And this is the vantage point from where I took another picture where I framed the lighthouse, this lighthouse, but through here. So the lighthouse is behind me. This is the road leading from the lighthouse. All right, and so let's see what we can do with this one here. Even though I don't think this is a beautiful picture, but we can increase the contrast and drop the exposures a little bit. I wish I had framed this better. There's just too much. I don't know if I needed to include all of this, and if I was, just go all out and skip out on the roads. You know, kind of like this. Maybe, I don't know. I'll have to think about it some more. All right, and the last one that I'll show, actually second to last one. This video is going on for 2 days, it looks like. No one's gonna watch us, but in any case, this is the side of to the right of this structure, and it was gorgeous. I wouldn't have climbed on here, but there are people climbing on here. This person was in awe as I was, but braver than I was, which isn't saying much because I'm not very brave in certain respects. And I thought it was just cool that you had these little paths crisscrossing on the side. Not a lot to walk on, at least not from where I was standing. Looked treacherous. It's not a fall off, by the way, at least not on this side. But over here, there's nothing but cliffs, like right here. 5 more steps this way, and it's a tumble down to the cliff. But you know, to each their own. People like to explore in different ways. I liked how that picture looked with these people standing here. We can drop the exposure a little bit and increase the contrast, and we wouldn't do much else. Actually, I would select the sky and drop the exposure and the whites. And I think, let's see, before and after. Yeah, it looks good. That looks good. All right, and the last one is of this lighthouse. And in the background here, what we can see is the same bellowing of geyser, I think, behind this hill with the lighthouse. And this lighthouse, as I said in the other videos, is pretty big. So that's a door that you can use to go inside. Well, not the public, but the people who would take care of the lighthouse. So if I was standing at the foot of this lighthouse, I'd be about here on this little platform. So it's pretty big. It would take about 25 minutes or so, maybe 20 minutes to walk along this path to get up here. And I like this path that was pointing up to, or leading up to the lighthouse. Now, if I had done a better job than barely average, I would have stood a little bit to the right to take this picture. The intent of this, though, was to just get these, to get the illusion that it was clouds in the sky. Clearly didn't work, at least not in my eyes. And then to get the house, or this housing structure, in the shadow of the mountain, and also get lighthouse. So already you can get the idea that I'm trying to include too much in these pictures. All right, in any case, let's see what we can do to edit this to make it look like someone other than a dingbat took it. Okay, so let us select the sky and let's add some contrast, drop the exposure, drop the highlights, select a color to make it blue. Let's dehaze it, by the way. So that actually looks better already. That actually looks better already, you know. And let's add a luminance mask or a color. Let's add a color range mask. Let's see what that does. Yeah, that looks good. Let's do contrast, saturation. And then let's see what we have before, after, before, after. We can do even more. If we ask Lightroom to select a subject, what will it select? It's gonna select the mountain, I guess. No, it's selected, rightfully so, the lighthouse. Incredible. So let's take down the whites a little bit and drop the highlights. Drop the highlight. I'm trying to save this little burnt out area over here. Drop the exposure. All right, and then let's see what that looks like before, after. I like this better. I mean, anything would have been an improvement from what I initially took, I think. I'm too hard on myself. Actually, not really. Anyways, I think this is better. Right, cool. That's it. Take it easy.